Hi everyone, it's Tom with the LEC preview for the 5th week of the LEC Summer Split 2022. We're now past the halfway point of the league, so we're now entering into the second half of the double round robin. In other words, teams are going to play against each other again. And even though you could say some teams are still clearly better than the others, I do expect some different results this time around because the start was maybe a bit hectic. Then we had like 2 weeks of peak shape or teams getting back into shape. And last week was complete chaos with basically only upsets happening. It should have been one of the clearest win scenarios for most of these teams, I should say, where you had clear favorites heading into each game. And then just pandemonium happened and it was crazy. And as I said on Twitter, I do think that the league is in a pretty bad state at the moment. In terms of the level of competition, I think that's a pretty bad sign when you can have so many, in theory, favorite matchups and they just almost all go to shit. But on the other hand, I do think that we still have quite some weeks to go. We have 4 more weeks of the regular split, which is quite some time. We have playoffs where teams can show up and can pop off as well. So I am not very optimistic about the state of EU at the moment. But I'm not going to draw any conclusions yet because just a few weeks ago we were saying how dominant teams like Excel and even like G2 was still going strong. But the same can happen the other way around, right? It can happen that a team suddenly flourishes again and then everything will be good. We saw Fnatic flourish after week 5 or in week 5 of the spring split as well. So I'm going to give it a bit more time. I think that after week maybe 6 or round 7, if then these teams are still underperforming, then sound the alarm bells really hard. But give them a bit more time to adjust to a new patch as well. We'll see what happens then. But before I get into my thoughts on each individual team, as promised, and I didn't do this last time, I forgot, my mind was completely at a different place last week, trying to secure talks for finding a new job after Invent fired basically all of their North American and European stuff. So didn't get my mind straight then, but did get it now. So let's look at the top 10 in my LEC SuperFantasy lobby. As you can see, the top 4 is really, really close. They're all within 75 points from each other. And even beyond that, it's not like there's a massive gap, right? It's just a few weeks of, or like a few days, I should say, rather, that you maybe get 50 points more than the person ahead of you and you climb. I myself am slowly climbing. I had a pretty good week last week, but still not in the top 10 yet. But I'll get there. I'll get there. I have to. It's a bit shameful to not make it to your own top 10, right? So without further ado, let's talk about each individual team now. I think we'll start with BDS because the one constant seems to be in the LEC at the moment. BDS will lose. This team is just not anywhere. I'm not seeing any development at this point. Where you could see in the spring split that they were pinning down their early game. I think it's all over the place now. I mean, obviously, they have Agresivo, they have Erdote now. 2 rookies who have to get used to this big stage, and sure, that's all fine and well, but in the end this team was trying to contest for playoffs in the summer split, and it's not going anywhere yet. So I'll reiterate a point that I made last week about BDS, which is that I think that they should focus more on finding the players who will consistently contribute to the team in a positive way, keep them and further develop them and try to rotate more talent for next year and see if they find any combinations do work, because this one is clearly not working at this point. And it's hard to see, even after 4 weeks, you could say that some of the top teams have dropped off, but with BDS, it's a case of consistently being bad, where maybe once every while they have like a few fights that go well or one phase that goes well, but consistently it's just not good. And I'm not sure what's going wrong. It's probably a mix of things behind the scenes, of motivation and maybe practice not going well, stuff like this. I just hope for these players, because it's all their ambition to play in the LEC, that they are gonna find their shape at some point and show what they're capable of. Because if you're in the LEC, most of the times you're there because you have like some gifts, right? You're talented in some way, and it's just not showing at this point. So that's very tough to see. But I genuinely wish them the best. I have no ill wishes on any of the players in the LEC. SK Gaming went 2-0 last week, which was a big surprise. Gilius on Poppy was a massive part of that, and one insane game, and one game where he was more of like a facilitator, I suppose. But for me, the big point with SK Gaming is Certus, obviously the mid laner who's popping off, which is great to see. He was hyped to me by Darius, who's a friend of mine who used to work at Schalke, when Certus was still in Schalke's academy team. And now I'm finally, after like 1.5 split of him being in the LEC, I suppose, I'm finally seeing what this is what he's made of, and I hope he can stick with his confidence. The mid pool, obviously, in the LEC is pretty stacked overall, and it's good to get new contenders. Last split with Viteo popping off, and then Certus joining in there as well. I think SK Gaming overall as a team is still not going to make playoffs, but it's good for them to get these 2 wins because it gives them a way to kind of leverage any advantages they have, because in the past I would say, okay, look at what's going wrong and you can learn from this, but there was so much going wrong, but now they're finding ways that they can actually win games. So they can say, okay, what are the key points that we can identify where we win games and use that going forward. So overall, obviously, it's very good for them to go 2-0, especially given the opponent they played against, but I'll have to see how long this lasts for and if this is actually something they can continue doing into, I guess, into a playoffs contention performance, which I still am doubtful about, but they're at least finding something. Also, Genex with the top Shyvana pick, they're finding ways to go about this, which is good to see. G2 is at 4-5, is now in a terrible position of a shared 7th place together with Astralis. I said last week, and I think I've said it before as well, that I will keep having faith in G2 to clutch it when it matters until they don't. And that is because players like Caps and players like Jankos are the players who will step up and carry when it's really dire. Also, Janko said on Euphoria that the mood in the team is still very good and very positive overall, as in they're not... It's not like a toxic environment where they are just continuously dreading playing a game or something like this. They're still optimistic about finding ways to create solutions, and that's very good. So I do still think G2 is going to be able to turn it around in terms of making it to the playoffs. It's just in which position is it going to be at this point. Is it going to be, if they finish in 6th place, obviously they just get a bare, like I think 20 championship points, which combined with their 90 from spring would put them somewhere in the middle of the pack. So they might barely clutch it to like an upper bracket, which would be the most important for them, because now that the LEC is getting 4 seeds at Worlds, as was announced by Riot yesterday, I think that you just need 1 win as a 3rd or 4th seed in order to get into World in any best of 5, so either in top bracket or low bracket. If you're 1st seed of the playoffs or heading into playoffs, you automatically qualify, and if you're 2nd seed, you only need 1 win. Unless the 1st seed wins their series, then 2nd seed is already qualified because they can't drop outside of the lower brackets, which would cut off before top 4. So it's a bit complicated. Obviously, I made a post on Twitter which made me a bit clearer with how the brackets work. But I think for G2, that's the most important part, get to that upper bracket so they have 2 chances at making it to Worlds. I don't see them finishing 1st in the regular split. I think that's either going to be Mad Lions or Rogue, but we'll get to them in a bit. Astralis, 4-5. I think Astralis is just a team that I expected them to be at this point, where they throw a spanner in the works at some point. They've been a bit more successful at it than I anticipated, honestly. But it's good. It's fun. It's not a playoffs team, in my opinion, still, because they lack too much overall. But they have individual performances that can show up very well. They have Jonghoon on the pike can go crazy. They had Kobe doing well as an ADC. We have Dajo, who can sometimes pop off on champions like Vex, but even on Orianna, he had fantastic ults last weekend. We have Xerxes, who's been pretty consistent as a jungler. Chachi in the top lane is still grieving his life away in most of his laning phases. But from what I understand, he's more of the shot caller type. So maybe, that's a sacrificial lamp for Stratos so the other can thrive. And if that's how they find the most success with this lineup, then I don't judge them for it. And they should keep doing that. Vitality, 5 and 4. It's okay. Still not in any way the Vitality that I hope them to be. Labrov and Karzi are a very weak part of this lineup together in the bot lane. And I'm not sure if that's ever going to be fixed. Karzi is a player who shows up when it matters. We have seen that in the past. Remember, if people tend to forget that at like MSI 2021, when Matt Lyons went there, he was their best player. You can look back and watch it. People will say like, oh, maybe Oyoya was great, or Humanoid. Humanoid was such a key part of the lineup. Karzi was insane at MSI. People tend to forget this. But combined, this duo doesn't do much. In the interview I did with Alfari, he said, they need to demand more resources. Well, it's high time for them to start doing that. Perks is fine. Alfari is pretty good last weekend, obviously. Haru, still not sure what he's doing. He seems to just be perma farming. But apparently he brings some call to the team, which is also important. It's just Vitality is a mediocre team at this point. Not much else to say about them. Their early game can be way better. To give them much more advantages given the players they have on the roster, but it's just not happening. Not sure if that progress is going to get there at some point, but at this point I'd be inclined to be a bit skeptical because I haven't seen the progress so far in that regard. Misfits, big winning streak, obviously. They're doing super well at this point, which is super exciting for them. They've now found a way to find consistent success. This is a team that could clutch it into playoffs now, actually, over a team maybe like Vitality if I look at the standings, because, again, I do think G2 is going to be a bit more clutch when it matters. And they're doing well. Veteo is finding his confidence again. Neon is doing well. I think overall this lineup is definitely not at the level that they were in spring, right? Where they would just have these super clutch comeback games in scenarios where they should have probably lost. But they're still decent. It's a middle of the pack team, similar to Vitality, but with Misfits I'm a bit more optimistic in their clutch potential and in their overall individual pop-off skills, which should be higher on Vitality, but is higher on Misfits in these scenarios. Fnatic. Fnatic. It's an emotional team. I said it, I think, after week 2 in that episode of Best in the West, that I think this team is very dependent on what mood they arrive on stage, or maybe it was a different episode, but it doesn't really matter. I'll reiterate it now. I think if I see a Fnatic that's positive and smiling on stage, I think they're going to win. If I see a Fnatic that enters the stage and is a bit more calm, a bit more serious, they're probably going to lose, because whenever something goes wrong, then they'll crumble. And the whole team falls apart. Whereas if they're positive and optimistic, and I see them enter the stage like that, everything just seems to click. They seem to play out their games very well. I think that Wunder and Razork obviously last week had a very tough week, which is when just a week before that, Veteran and I praised them a lot, and you could see them working well together. Not sure what went wrong there internally, but that was obviously very disappointing to see, and it gave a signal that, okay, maybe Fnatic doesn't have something to consistently play around, because they tried playing around bot a few times, and sometimes it worked, sometimes it failed, then they played around top a bit more, which had found success then they tried again, and now it's failed. Not sure where Fnatic is going to go with this, but at least if their mood is good, it seems that Fnatic is going to play well, but that seems to be a terrible predicament for me to be in. Because how are you going to make sure that your team is consistently in a good mood? You can't. It's impossible, right? Maybe you have just a 1 week of bad scrims. It happens. It happens to every team where sometimes you just completely in scrims for a week. But I don't see Fnatic consistently combating something like that. XL, the team that everybody was super excited about at the start of the split, dropped off in last week in the chaos. As well, Excel seemed to suffer. I think Excel just needs to figure out the meta a bit more. When they have the meta figured out, they have shown that they can play around each other very well. So I think that's just a matter of time a bit more. Obviously, it doesn't look very good going 0-2 if you're a team that finally is supposed to make worlds. But in the end, I still think Excel is the caliber of players to play around very well. So Mad Lions then 6-3 in second place, is one step above all the others with 5-4. And I think Mad Lions has probably the best early game in the LEC at the moment. They're super clean. If you look at how Elyoya and Niski navigate together, it's very well done. It's very consistent. Maybe you could say sometimes a bit basic, but it works for them, right? They push in the lane, they roam top, they either steal a camp or they gank the top laner, they get a kill, reset, get the leads that way going, or even towards the bot side later on. You know, they'll make sure that their players are in a comfortable position, depending on the draft. I think Mad Lions is also very good with their drafts. So, very good from them. Obviously, their mid game is an issue where against Astralis, they had this random tier 2 turret dive, which went completely wrong. Astralis found a way back into the game from that, and Mad Lions had to clutch it out a bit more. I think that was the game with the Elder Flip from Elyoya, but if you look at Mad Lions' progress overall, this is only 4 weeks that they've been playing on stage with Niski. They're already much better than before, and I can only see this going up as the weeks progress. So I'm very optimistic about Mad Lions. And then Rogue, 7-2 now, big win streak, 7 win streak actually. Seem to be back in shape. I think last week was the first week where I thought Rogue was actually very dominant in what they did with their games. And very clean. Obviously, they had a few times that they died, but the deaths were very inconsequential in terms of what it meant on the map. There were no objectives, so they didn't fall behind too much. Maybe a bit too greedy. Obviously, against top teams internationally, that's going to be punished relentlessly. But for now, in the LEC, I think this was the first week where I thought, okay, there's not a single stage where I think Rogue is actually throwing. And they're just comfortably, slowly closing out the game as Rogue used to do back in the days where they were dominant in the regular split from the start. So it seems that Rogue has found their footing again in that regard. And then we're going to go to the predictions. So let me pull up day 1 here. SK Gaming versus BDS. Well, as I said, I think BDS being the worst team in the league is the one constant. So I expect SK to win this. Yeah, it's just, I'm going to bet against BDS until they start winning or until they see some form of progress in how they play out their game. Misfits against Excel. I actually think Misfits is going to win this. I think Excel is going to need a bit more time to figure out how they want to play. And Misfits seems to have found exactly how they want to play. They play for the late game. They sacrifice early game, which used to be a strength for Excel. But I do think that they're not as good as leveraging that at this point, where they would try to figure out which lanes to play around during the game, and then kind of bounce back and forth in that. I think Misfits is just better at this point in the late game than Excel, and I think, yeah, as I said, I think just Misfits is going to win based on that, because they are more clutch at this point, and they seem to be more comfortable with how they want to play. Then we have Mad Lions versus Vitality. I think Mad Lions is going to win this. Mad Lions has a very good early game. Vitality's early game is notoriously bad. I think Mad Lions is going to get a big enough lead to be kind of insurmountable, I guess is the right way to say this, against Vitality. And yeah, I'm not sure. Obviously, Vitality individually would say they have the star power, but as a team, I just don't see him. I think Elyoya is going to basically run circles around Haru, who's been very predictable, I guess, with his jungling. It's very standard farming a lot, so I'm not sure how Vitality expects to throw a curveball at Mad Lions in this matchup. G2 versus Astralis, even though they are tied now, I'm still probably going to give the benefit of the doubt to G2. The thing is, Astralis has this potential of throwing a spanner in the works, as I've said like many times now, but in the end, G2, I find it hard to bet against them, against this Astralis lineup, because of the power, the star power they have. I think that Caps and Jankos, who are the duo who kind of have to lead G2 to many victories. I don't think that Astralis has the power, the understanding of the game or the skill checks to kind of keep those two in check. Also on the top side, we have Broken Blade, who likes playing hard carries, and Physic Chachi, who is being playing very badly in the laning phase, so I think that's going to be punished a lot. And I don't think the bot side of Astralis either can punish G2's bot side so much that will be a pivoting point for them where they can say, okay, but we're going to play through bot and we're going to get ahead that way. So I think G2's top side is just going to outperform anything that Astralis can do on the bot side in this case. Then we have, to round it up, we have Fnatic versus Rogue. It's a bit of a coin flip for me. As I said, I think if Fnatic shows up with a good mood, I think they are going to be performing well. And they have beat Rogue before, I think, at the start of the split. I think they beat Rogue there. So they have the potential, and obviously individually they have the potential. I think Razork is a very good jungler still. And I think he can punish Malrang's very gank heavy style pretty well by just maybe just farming more and just getting ahead that way and being the carry, or playing through bot or top. I think would either could work. It kind of depends on the draft a bit. But if Fnatic shows up with all serious phases, if they are in a bad mood or something like this, Rogue is gonna stomp this. So it's a coin flip for me. For now, I'll just say Fnatic's gonna win. Maybe after the bad mood, the terrible week last week, they realized, oh, we're gonna do fun activities, or we need to come together, or and do stuff. You know, it's it feels like it's kind of either like 1 week they're in a good mood, and then the next week they'll be in a terrible mood again. So maybe this week they'll be in a very good mood. Who knows what they're gonna show up like? But I'll say Fnatic if they show up in a good mood, Rogue if Fnatic doesn't. And then we go to day number 2. We start off with BDS against Astralis. I think Astralis is going to win this. I made my point clear about BDS earlier. Mad Lions versus SK. Still think Mad Lions is going to win this. Very good early game. I don't think SK has the capabilities of punishing Mad Lions' mistakes in the mid game as well as Astralis did. Astralis has a bit more of this clutch factor, a bit more of this vibe where they're like, yeah, you know what? If you throw, we're actually going to push our advantages. I think SK doesn't do that as well. They're decent at catching people on rotations or punishing some mistakes, but overall I think SK is still a team that needs to be in control, or at least go even early in order to get their wins, and I don't think that's going to happen against Mad Lions. Vitality versus Misfits, probably going to Misfits, but it's a very close game. It's funny because many of these games this week are very close, and you'll see that they're just complete stomps by the team that you're supposed to be favored. Whereas last week was the opposite, where it should be very polarized. It should be very clear who's gonna win, and it was a complete fiesta. Who knows what's gonna happen? But it's pretty interesting. It's pretty fun. So I'm gonna say Vitality against Misfits. It's probably go to Misfits. I think that with the bot side of Misfits, they'll have continuous advantages over the bot side of Vitality. I think that actually mid could go pretty even, because Perkz likes to he got his ass handed to him by Viteo and Spring a bit. And I think he's definitely the kind of person who said like, okay, I'm gonna step up now. I'm gonna show this kid how it's done. So maybe Perkz will do well against Viteo, but I struggle to see Vitality being a team that consistently plays through their top side this game, because that would be my suggestion of winning the game. Play through your top side and get ahead there. But I'm having a hard time seeing how they're going to do that. They're probably going to ban Lee Sin against Zlatan, but Zlatan can be decent on other junglers as well, where Haru is just decent and not particularly stand out on any jungler he plays, right? So then you have left, we have Alvari versus Irrelevant. Alvari is probably going to win the lane, but is he going to be able to leverage the advantage that he gets in the lane as well as he did last week? I'm not sure. I don't think Misfits is a team he can do that against. Last week he did super well, and he got an early lead, and he completely dominated the game, like all over the game. But I doubt that he's going to be able to do that again against a team like Misfits. Then we have Rogue versus G2. I would say Rogue is going to win this. G2 is the skill check team. Rogue is just a meticulous play by the book team. And they're just better, right? It's very simple. Rogue follows the script. They follow the game plan very well. G2 doesn't really know how to follow the plan they make, because their plans from the get-go seem a bit weird in terms of their draft. They're not out drafting like they used to do in spring or at MSI, even in their first days, where they have these crazy combos that they drafted. They're not in the same spot at this point, so I would say that Rogue is going to win this. And then Fnatic against Excel. which I guess after week 3 would have been an incredibly hype matchup. After week 4, it's a bit of a matchup of the two Debbie Downers, the fools who fell. I honestly don't know. It's so tough to say this one. I would be inclined to give it to Fnatic if they beat Rogue the day prior. If Fnatic didn't beat Rogue on the day prior, I think XL is gonna win, because then Fnatic's mood is probably gonna be ruined heading into this day. And as I said, they're mood dependent, so I don't know. Rogue is a coin flip, and then Fnatic, Fnatic's match against Rogue is a coin flip, and then this Fnatic against XL is a bit of it's highly dependent on what happens there. But I guess since I predicted Fnatic to win against Rogue, I'll predict them to win against XL as well. But yeah, I think XL. I don't know. If they find some basic meta and execute early game plan with relative, it doesn't have to be super clean gameplay, because Fnatic is not a team that punishes you heavily if you make any mistakes. But if they massively screw up the early game, which I don't think XL is gonna do, then I would say Fnatic is just favored regardless in a way. But yeah, man, it's tough. It's tough, this one. I'll give it to Fnatic, but I could see XL win just as much, as I said. So those are my predictions. Thank you very much for watching. This weekend I'll be a bit busy with personal things, so I'm not sure if I'm gonna be able to get an interview with his YouTube channel. I'll reach out to teams to arrange an interview outside of the LEC days, because I won't be around to at my PC at least to record them live. But I'll try that, and we'll be back with a new Best in the West episode next week. Sorry for missing out last week, but we tried to make it work. It just couldn't get our calendars, our agendas aligned, which happens unfortunately. But we'll make sure to be back for the recap of this week. So thank you very much for watching. If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more content.